Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 24 playthrough of the Buffalo Wings. We are just past the trade deadline in the 2042 season, and our Buffalo Wings are pretty well positioned as we try to get into the playoffs for a record setting 15th consecutive year and try to defend our World Series title from last season. We are up 7 games on the Miami Marlins in the NL East. We are up 3.5 games on the Los Angeles Dodgers for the best record in the National League, and we are up a game and a half on the Cleveland Guardians for the best record in baseball. So if the season were to end today, we'd be in as good a position as possible to potentially defend our title with home field advantage for any potential playoff series that we would have. And we're also in a good spot as far as injuries. Luis Palencia, one of the top prospects in our organization, is unfortunately out with a ruptured UCL. We were planning on bringing him up in September, and that will not be happening this year. If we're lucky, that will happen next year. But of players who have been on the major league roster this year, nobody is hurt right now. So the goal is to maintain the best record in baseball and to keep this team healthy and not suffer any significant injuries between now and the end of the regular season. We only made one trade at the trade deadline, brought back the accomplished closer Darnell Polite, who's going to be stepping into a middle relief setup kind of role for us to bolster our bullpen. We traded away the young left-handed hitting outfielder Tylen Hotaling to get Polite on board. But because we had signed our former left-handed hitting outfield star Bobby Bolig to a minor league contract and had him stashed in Albany for much of this year, feel like Bolig is probably a better left-handed bat against right-handed pitching than Hotaling at this point. So feel like we upgraded a little bit hitting-wise. We certainly upgraded our bullpen by bringing on Polite. Probably a little weaker defensively now than we were before because Bolig went to a DH role. We want to try to keep him healthy because he's fragile physically, and that meant that Juan Ramiro is back in left field, at least against right-handed pitching for us. So all in all, still think it's a move that makes this team better for this season, and given that we are in win-now mode as the defending World Series champions and is a team that potentially could be losing several of our top players next year and will likely look very differently, the goal is to make another long run in the playoffs this season. But before we dive into these last couple months of the season and try to see how well we end up being positioned for the playoffs, going to revisit a topic that Jarek Braxton and Jack Hammer Possessor have been commenting on frequently over the last few episodes. And it's Alejandro Contreras, our starting second baseman. And they thought it would be useful if I went back and saw what we actually gave up for him, given that he's now almost 27 years old. And personally, to me, I think he's working out fine. I mean, if I get close to league average offensive production, which we've gotten from him with a 98 WRC plus, and a guy who can play a number of infield positions competent defensively, I don't think it's the end of the world. But to really be able to evaluate the trade, we need to see exactly what we ended up giving up for him. And as you may remember from this trade, which was almost 3 years ago in game time, gave up a lot of players. The primary one was Guadalupe Amezcua, who had been a top 50 prospect in baseball. He was a player that was found by our scout thanks to our big investment in international scouting and our big investment in scouting in general. And he was one of the top prospects in our system for an extended period of time. He never really hit the way that we hoped he would, so we were happy to give him up in the trade. And I think looking at his profile right now, worse offensively and worst defensively than Contreras, and Amezcua at almost 26 years old has still never made it to play even a game in the majors. That part of the deal certainly worked out for us. The issue was, though, we gave up a lot of other assets to bring Mr. Contreras on board. Luis Mercedes, pitching prospect, doesn't look like he really worked out. Movement and control, not great. He has spent 21 days in the majors last season with Houston, it looks like, but not a big-time pitching prospect. Jeff Marsh looks like someone who's actually developed into a potentially useful third baseman. He's been up in the majors parts of the last 2 years with the Reds. His infield range is brutal, and I think I think this is worse than it was when he was on our team, or worse than it was expected when he was on our team. But you know that I like defense, and he doesn't bring much to the table there. But still looks like a plus contact and plus home run hitter who's put up a 115 WRC plus in 185 major league at-bats at this time. And I think Marsh was a relatively high draft pick by us. Yeah, second rounder, 78th overall back in 2035. Luis Soriano, catcher that we included, decent defensively but not going to hit enough. Nelson Abarca, another guy, middling prospect, happy to throw him in. Tim Quintus is already retired, never made it above A ball, so obviously not much there. Luis Carlo, a fast left fielder who can't really hit, not all that exciting. Remy Montalvo, nothing prospect. So right now, even though we gave up a good volume of players, Amezcua looks like he may never do anything in the majors. Honestly, Marsh seems like the best piece that we've given up so far, and because of his defensive limitations, I don't mind doing that. But we haven't looked yet at two players who could be useful, and they were the final two who got the deal done, and that's Josh Behar and Jorge Climaco. So this, in my mind, is what will determine whether this trade is good or not, almost 3 years in retrospect. Josh Behar looks like he really hasn't become much of anything. This is a guy and he's not even playing organized baseball anymore. He's in the independent leagues this year where he is hitting .329. I guess that is technically organized baseball. I guess I should be more careful with my words. He's no longer playing in the affiliated minor leagues. Behar, you may remember, is a guy who slipped to the 6th round because he was looking for an insane amount of money, and we happened to have a lot of money that year, so we took a flyer on him and ended up not being a real good investment to us. So right now I'm still feeling good about the trade, but I can't remember whether it was Jarek Braxton, Jackhammer Possessor, or somebody else who noticed that we had to include Climaco in the trade to get it done. And I didn't really talk about it too much at the time. Climaco, I believe, was a guy who had been a perennial 300 hitter for us in the minors. Just didn't feel like we had a clear roster spot for him with the glut of young outfielders we had coming up behind him and the players that we already had on the team. That said, a guy who could potentially be a 300 hitter with a little bit of pop, but not great pop, is still a potentially interesting asset that we gave away. So let's see what Mr. Climaco has done and has become. The contact is okay, gap power really good, not going to strike out. The home run power is limited, competent, wonder why, competent defensively. He's proficient on the base paths, but not particularly fast. And it looks like he's spent the last 4 years going up and down between AAA and the majors. So kind of found himself in a similar role that he did with us. You can see here what I mentioned. He had hit 300 for us in AAA 3 consecutive years with it was either barely a sniff of the majors or maybe I think he did play with us briefly in the majors. We'll check that shortly. And the last 3 years, he's hit 340, 307, and then 273 in AAA, and he's now 28 years old. But let's take a look at what he's actually done in the majors. And he did get that brief cup of coffee with us in 2039, shortly before we traded him away. And he's spent parts of 4 seasons in the majors, and he's hit over 300 in 3 of those 4 seasons. The issue is that the year that he had 180 at-bats, he hit just 206. So he's had 158 games, 503 at-bats in the majors, 278 hitter, 30 doubles, 14 homers, 109 WRC+. So a useful offensive player, a right-handed bat, which is a little more commoditized, particularly on our team. Good personality, Iron Man as far as his durability. So Climaco and Marsh in particular look like useful-ish major league players. A Mezqua and maybe a pitcher or two might be borderline roster guys down the future. So I think it's fair to say that we gave up a lot for Contreras. Knowing what I know now, I still think I might do it again. Contreras' development has definitely been impacted by his low adaptability and his low work ethic. He's 26 and a half years old, and our scout is still saying he can get better in terms of his contact, home run power, eye, and avoid strikeouts, but it never really seems to be happening. So it seems like there's definitely some untapped potential here with Contreras that he's probably never going to realize because he doesn't work that hard and he's not all that adaptable to change, which we also see with the fact that although we've played him off and on in his minor league career at multiple positions, second base, where he's playing every day this year, is the only position that he is as adept at as he could be. Takes him a lot of time to pick up those positions as well. That said, I still don't mind the batting profile. I don't mind the glove. Taking a look at what he's done in his major league career, 97 WRC plus over parts of 4 years, only 401 at-bats, so he actually has even fewer at-bats than Mr. Climaco at the major league level at this point, because we have tried to get him some seasoning in the minors to work on those batting ratings and work on his position versatility. I could see arguments both ways. I still feel like we got the best player in the trade, and as I talked about, I'm not incredibly impressed with what Climaco and Marsh are. Marsh, if he didn't have the defensive limitations, would have been a more interesting player. But I'm guessing if he was a better defensive player, we might not have included him in the trade and may have tried to get someone else in there. The fact that a Mezqua really didn't turn out to be much of anything works in our favor. If you've got thoughts on the trade in retrospect here, 3 years almost after we've done it, would love to hear them. I think I'd still do it. I think I got the best player in the deal. But I can certainly see how others would have different opinions, since we gave up a lot of players, and it was certainly possible that one or two of the guys we gave up could have become better than Contreras, even though in my mind it doesn't seem as if they have. So thanks for your patience listening to that. Just kind of wanted to follow up on some of the comments in recent episodes and put the actual information out there for people to think about and analyze and share opinions on. And with that, we're going to start playing through these last 2 months of the season. And as I said, the goals are to remain healthy, and maintain the best record in baseball. And if we can get Deshawn Seifu a 15th consecutive stolen base crown in the National League, that would be pretty cool too. And we've simmed ahead another week, things going okay on the diamond as we've extended the lead over the Marlins and the Mets to 8 and 9 games respectively, still ahead of the Guardians for the best record in baseball and the Dodgers for the best record in the National League. Did just have a little bit of an injury scare here, though. Our stopper, Nate Ruckel, some elbow inflammation that he's going to need a week to recover from. Given the depth of our pitching staff, and these ratings aren't that good. I've been doing some work with the minors, so I'm looking relative to the FSL right now. Ruckel's great, but he's not that great. We are going to be very conservative with Mr. Ruckel and place him on the 15-day IL. We've got plenty of good pitchers down in AAA. No need for us to push things. And that'll also give us an opportunity to move Mr. Polite, who's been good in his small sample size with us, into a stopper role right in front of Joe Scott. And as we've been deciding who to bring up, we've also made a couple of moves to the 40-man roster. Was disappointed to see that Chris Lott, one of the top prospects in our organization, just suffered a herniated disc in his back a couple days ago, out for 7 weeks. So that likely ends his season. He was 12-5 with a 4.62 ERA in AAA Albany this year. We anticipated bringing him up, but he was on the minor league IL. But by moving him to the 60-day IL, we were able to get him off of the 40-man roster. And then we also just made a move to waive and DFA Kevin Hale, starting pitcher who we picked up right as the season was starting in the trade with the Rockies. The trade that picked us up, or that let us get Jesus Rivera off of the books, who we did not have any option years left on, and it looks like he's having a pretty mediocre season offensively, even though he's playing in Colorado. Hoping that no one will take Hale from us, but we wanted to open up some spots on the 40-man roster for people who weren't on the roster yet that we might want to see, not just in September, but possibly even in the postseason. And we're going to promote Mike Roberts, who wasn't on the 40-man, to the majors. He's been in Albany for parts of the last 3 years now. A guy that we picked in the 7th round in 2039 out of Coastal Carolina. Really like his profile. Think he can be a pretty good pitcher. And he's put up a 2.56 ERA with well over a strikeout per inning as Albany's closer for us. Is fragile physically, but feel that the right-hander, who's 24 years old, has earned his first shot at the majors. And we will bring him up and see what he can do for us out of the bullpen for the next few weeks while Mr. Ruckel is on the IL. That still leaves us one more 40-man roster spot to potentially play with over the next 3 weeks, if we think there's somebody that might make sense to consider for September and or the playoff roster. And we've simmed ahead a bit more, another week in the books. It's Monday the 18th. Ruckel is fully healed from his injury now. Still has 6 days left on the IL, so it seems like it was a relatively minor thing. But given the depth we have in our pitching staff in the minors, didn't mind giving an opportunity at the major league level to Roberts. Looks like, unfortunately for us, he still hasn't thrown a pitch yet. Guess we've probably been getting some pretty good starting pitching. We're 7.5 up on the Mets, 8.5 up on the Marlins now. We are actually 3-7 in our last 10, so we haven't been playing really well. And we've actually fallen behind Cleveland for the best record in baseball. We are 2 games behind Cleveland for the best record in baseball, and only a game and a half up on the Dodgers for the best record in the National League. So Seems like things have gone south since we put Ruckel on the IL. You can see Seifu no longer leading the majors or the National League in steals, but only one away from being tied for the National League stolen base crown. And the dog days of August have not been kind to our Buffalo Wings. Winning percentage is down to .632 on the season. Still have an 8.5 game lead on the Mets, 9.5 on the Marlins. Game and a half up on the Dodgers for the best record in the NL. But Cleveland continues to play very well, and they're still 2 games ahead of us for the best record in baseball. Our stopper, Mr. Ruckel, is ready to come back. Roberts only pitched in 1 game for us, went 2 2/3 out of the pen. 2 hits allowed, 2 strikeouts, no walks, home runs, or earned runs. So he did fine for us. We are going to send him down for the next week back to AAA. He'll be coming back up on September 1st, but Polite, admittedly a small sample size, but he has not done well in the stopper role. So we're going to be glad to give Mr. Ruckel his role as our stopper back on the 26-man roster. And we made it to September call-ups, and we finished the month of August strong. Our ace, Alexis Barajas, ended up being named the National League Pitcher of the Month. 2.80 ERA with 45 strikeouts in 35 1/3 innings, and a 6-0 record for the month. We fortunately got to feast on the bottom feeders in our division over the last few days of August. We swept the 4-game series in Pittsburgh before taking 2 out of 3 against Washington before the month finished up. So after the pretty mediocre middle part of the month, ended up doing fine when all was said and done in the month of August. As the calendar flips to September, our lead over the Mets in the division is 11.5 games, magic number down to 20. Up a game and a half on the Dodgers for the best record in the National League. And we are up 2 games on the Guardians now. So that means that the Dodgers are the closest to us for the best record in baseball as well. With a month-ish left in the season, Deshawn Seifu 3 stolen bases away from potentially leading the National League in steals for a 15th consecutive year. Taking a look at the pitchers, Alexis Barajas, who we just talked about, second in the National League with a 2.58 ERA, leading the National League with 15 wins, and leading the National League with a 4.2 pitcher WAR. So certainly conceivable that he'll be in the mix to possibly win his 2nd Cy Young Award. And Joe Scott, leading the National League with 38 saves, has 83 strikeouts and 61 2/3 innings pitched. 3.06 ERA. He'll probably get some votes for his 3rd potential Mariano Rivera Award when all is said and done. But still a month left in the season, and it's time to figure out who we're going to bring up to bolster our roster. And we figured out our 4 September call-ups to put our roster to 30 players for this last month of the season as we try to push to maintain the best record in baseball. We did bring Roberts back, as I mentioned. Hopefully we'll get to see him in more than 1 game over the next month. And then we also brought up Simeon Minelli, international free agent signing from 2037. Another one of the real good pitching prospects we've been able to develop over the past several years in this sim. 16-3 with a 2.43 ERA in AAA Albany this year, 194 strikeouts and 170 2/3 innings. Ridiculous 199 ERA plus and 62 FIT minus. Not much left for the 24-year-old to prove in the minors, so hopefully we'll get an opportunity to see what he can do at the major league level over the next month or so. He could be in the mix to be in the bullpen in the playoffs. And with the likelihood that we'll be moving on from Alexis Mendoza this offseason, Minelli, particularly with the injury to Luis Palencia, and now even more recently, Chris Lott could very well be in the mix to be a fifth starter, or perhaps even more than that for us next season. Turning to the two everyday players, we added Willard Vokey. You may remember he's the guy, the 26-year-old that we got back when we traded away Damani Hainsworth right at the start of the year when we needed to clear a roster spot. 273 with 44 homers and 118 ribbies for us at Albany this year. 126 WRC plus. Doesn't really have a position to play defensively. Doesn't have a lot of speed. But he is a durable player, and he's a right-handed bat who can make some contact and hit the ball out of the park. He hasn't had a shot at the majors, even though he's 26 and a half years old. So we are going to give that him over the next few weeks, although he won't be starting. And then the most interesting move is the international free agent that we signed this past offseason, Juan Ramirez, who is likely our catcher of the future, is going to get to make his major league debut. He put up a 114 WRC plus in Double A Utica for us before we promoted him to Triple A Albany, where he's been even better, putting up a 152 WRC plus, combined 25 homers and 68 ribbies at those two levels. Excellent defensive catcher with durability. And we still think his home run power and his eye and his avoid strikeouts could all get a little better. His contact has developed to at least not embarrassing at the major league level. So with that combination of really good defense, durability, good eye, and an ability to occasionally hit a home run, interested in seeing what he can do. So Ramirez is going to take over for Walt Miller as our starter against left-handed pitching. It's very conceivable to me that Ramirez will make the postseason roster over Miller when all is said and done. I think it's almost certain that he'll do that, given how good he is defensively. I think the question right now is whether Ramirez will do something over the next month to tell us that maybe he should be the starter in the playoffs over Houlihan. Houlihan this year, 274 hitter, 89 WRC plus. So by Houlihan standards, it's his worst offensive season for us. He is fragile physically, and those of you who have followed us over the years know that he's missed the playoffs each of the last two seasons. So we have gone to a situation where, although Houlihan is still the erstwhile starter for us against right-handed pitching, Ramirez is going to be playing every other day, and we're going to throw Walt Miller in every fifth day. So Houlihan is actually going to be starting less than half of our games against right-handed pitching, and we're not even going to consider using him as a sub against left-handed pitching. So the goal is to try to get decent amount of playing time for the youngster Ramirez, and to keep Houlihan sharp enough for the playoffs that he'll be a productive player if and when he gets there, but most importantly, don't play him too much so we keep him healthy for the playoffs. So we've got a month to go in the season, 86 and 47 record, so that means we've got 29 games to go. Seifu needs to make up 3 stolen bases on Andres Ledesma to assure himself a 15th consecutive stolen base crown in the National League. And at 86 and 47, we're getting pretty close to clinching ourselves our 15th consecutive playoff appearance. And the first week of September has gotten off to a brutal start for the Buffalo Wings. We've now lost 6 in a row, dating back to the last day of July. Taking a look at the standings, we've only picked up 1 game as far as our magic number in the division. The Mets now only 7 games behind us, and the Dodgers now a game and a half ahead of us for the best record in baseball and the best record in the National League. So hopefully we can get things straightened out, but the team is not playing well in the early days of September. And another week in the books. The losing streak was extended to 7 games, but we have won 4 of 5 since. So taking a look at the standings as we head into the final 3 weeks of the season, still up 7 on the Mets, 90 and 54 record. We're now down 2.5, though, to the Dodgers for the best record in baseball. So it's conceivable that we could have a NLCS on the road. And Deshawn Seifu is still 2 stolen bases away from catching Ledesma to at least tie for a 15th consecutive NL stolen base crown. And some good news here on Saturday, September 20th. We've clinched our 15th consecutive postseason appearance, so that breaks the tie for the most all-time that we were in with the Atlanta Braves of the 90s and early aughts. 7 up on the Mets here. Our magic number for the division is down to 9, and we are a game and a half behind the Dodgers now and the Guardians for the best record in baseball. Deshawn Seifu, 3rd in the National League in steals, 3 away from the leader as we head into the final if I could do some simple math here, looks like the final 14 games of the regular season. And we just suffered 2 straight losses as we head into the last 2 weeks of the season. 12 games left in the schedule, and we're only 5 up on the Mets. We are now 3.5 behind the Dodgers and the Guardians for the best record in baseball. So that's looking increasingly unlikely with our bit of a swoon that we've experienced in August and September, at least compared to the pace that we were playing early in the year. Seifu still 3 steals away from a stolen base title. Barajas leading the league in wins at this point, but his ERA has ballooned to 3.22, so that probably explains some of the losses that we've experienced. Scott has fallen to 3rd in the league in saves, and Barajas has fallen to 3rd in the league in pitcher war. So things kind of, I don't want to say falling apart. That would be overdramatic. We're still having an excellent season, but we are not playing the way that we used to. We did end up salvaging with that big finish in August, 600 winning percentage for the 5th consecutive month. But you can see here in September, we're a disappointing 7-10 here on September 22nd. We rank 6th in the National League in runs scored this year and 1st in runs allowed with 2 weeks left in the season. Our record is 1 game above Pythagorean expectations. Not impossible that we could still have the best record in the National League or the best record in baseball. But it's certainly unlikely at this point, and our primary goal is probably to ensure that we hold off the Mets and earn a first-round bye and keep the team healthy. And the secondary goal is to see if Mr. Seifu can get some steals. And the good news is we just took 2 out of 3 in Montreal to start this week off. We've got 3 in a row at home against the Phillies and then 3 in a row at home against Miami before we finish off with 3 games in New York at the Mets. So the good news is that we've won 2 of our last 3. The bad news for us is that the Mets just don't lose. 9-1 in their last 10, and they've won 6 in a row. They've cut the gap between us and them to just 3.5 games, and our magic number is 7. So it's not inconceivable that that final 3-game series in New York could be for the division. I guess the good news is we've cut the gap to have the best record in the NL to 2.5 behind the Dodgers. Cleveland, though, is 3.5 games up on us now for the best record in baseball. So increasingly unlikely that we're going to catch them. They're 9-1 in their last 10. Seifu, with 64 steals, is now tied with Andres Lizama for the National League lead and tied with Lizama and Mike Contardo of the Mariners for the Major League lead. So A lot of interesting storylines that we'll be following here the last week of this season, or week and a half of the season, more accurately. And after losing the first game in our home series against the Phillies, we did take 2 in a row against them, but we had to go to extra innings to take the rubber game of the series. So 3 left against Miami, and then 3 on the road in the Mets to finish up this season. We're 3 wins away from a 100-win season. Taking a look at the standings, the Mets 9 wins in a row. So even though we took another series, they closed the gap on us another game. The Mets only 2.5 behind us right now at 97 and 59. We're 2.5 behind the Dodgers for the best record in the National League, and 2.5 behind both the Dodgers and the Guardians for the best record in baseball. Seifu up to 67 steals, so he is leading the majors by 2 steals at this point. Barajas has been stuck on 16 wins for a while, no longer one of the top guys in ERA, and Scott is no longer one of the top guys in the league in saves. So the chances of some postseason awards for our pitching staff seem to be slipping away here with a little bit of a slump we've had over the last month and a half or so. And the last home series of the regular season was not good. We lost 2 out of 3 to Miami. So we'll sim one more day right here to let the Mets catch up to us in games played. I have no idea what they've done, but we were 1-2. So if they went 4-0 over their last 4 games, I think that would mean that we'd be in a flat-footed tie with them if they've kept that winning streak going. Let's take a look at the standings. And the Mets, fortunately for us, have lost 2 in a row. So they are 3 games behind as we start the final 3-game series of the season at Citi Field. So our magic number is down to 1. Negatively, there's no way that we can catch the Dodgers for the best record in the National League or the best record in baseball. So I guess it is conceivable if we went 3-0 and Cleveland went 0-3, that we'd be tied record-wise with them, which might mean that we'd have home field advantage in the World Series over them. But right now the big goal is to take at least one of these 3 games against the Mets to ensure that we're going to have a first-round bye, and would love to take 2 of 3 to get the team back to 100 wins again this year. Deshawn Seifu with 68 steals, 3 up on Bethea and Tim Jones to lead the National League, and 2 up on Contardo as far as leading all of Major League Baseball, as Seifu tries to join the 15 consecutive years that the Wings have made the playoffs, with a 15th consecutive year leading the National League in steals. And we lost game 1 against the Mets, so the division is still not resolved, even though we played 160 games, 2 up on the Mets. What that loss does guarantee is that if we face the Dodgers in the NLCS, they will have home field advantage on us. And if we face the Guardians in the World Series, they would have home field advantage on us as well. And mercifully, after the way we've been playing here in September, now that it's October, we did get a win over the Mets in game 161 to clinch the division. 2 runs in the first inning, although they came back with runs in the 4th and the 4th and the 6th to tie us. But Mr. Rojas, the big first baseman, with a run-scoring double in the top of the 9th to give us the lead. Mr. Scott came on and picked up his 44th save. Polite went to 5-0 with the win in relief, and a nice performance from Mendoza, even though he did not get the W. So that clinches things for us. Seifu with his 69th stolen base of the year. I don't think it's set that he's going to be guaranteed to lead the league, because Tim Jones still 2 behind him, and Mike Contardo 1 behind him for the Major League lead. but looks like he's got a pretty good shot at this point. 99 and 62. The last thing that we might like to see is winning this final day of the year to get to 100. And we did not get to a 100th victory, another 3-2 game, but we were on the losing end in this one. The Mets with runs in the first and the fourth. Similarly, we came back with runs in the fifth and the seventh to tie it 2-2, but they scored in the bottom of the seventh. Our old buddy Ben Elmquist, a solo home run against us. Seifu 0 for 4, and he does not add any steals. Looks like he didn't reach base at all. Got a decent performance from Jim Lance, but David Rivera took the loss in relief. So it's going to be a 99-win season for our Buffalo Wings this year. We do get another National League East title, although the finish to the season was not great. Deshawn Seifu with the 69 stolen bases. Extends his major league record, having led the league in steals for 15 seasons and 15 consecutive seasons versus the 12 non-consecutive seasons that Rickey Henderson led the league in stolen bases. As the season comes to an end, a little bit of a resurgent season for Deshawn Seifu. The 107 WRC plus that he put up was his best in 5 years. As we talked about, led the league in steals for a 15th straight season. Got the batting average up to 286 after hitting in the 270s for 4 straight years. And the big goal is to, of course, win another World Series. But he is 79 hits away from the 3,000 hit club. And he is less than 200 stolen bases away from passing Rickey Henderson as the 38-year-old prepares for his 15th consecutive postseason appearance with our squad. Take a look and see if anyone else snuck onto the leaderboards. Barajas really got stuck with 16 wins there down the stretch as the ERA ballooned. He ended up third in the National League with 16 strikeouts. Soon as I was talking about him early in this episode as maybe being a potential Cy Young Award winner for the second time in his career, it seems like things went sideways on him immediately after that. Take a look at our team stats. And interesting finish to the season after having 5 consecutive months where we played well over 600 baseball. We were 13 and 16 combined in September and October. So we're not heading into the postseason feeling really great about our team. Our 99 wins, right in line with Pythagorean expectations, ended up middle of the pack of the National League with seventh in runs scored. You can see pretty good in on-base percentage, pretty good in WAR, pretty good in drawing walks and stealing bases. Other than that, we're kind of right in the middle of the pack in most of the offensive categories. Once again, the best pitching staff in the National League, first in the National League with only 582 runs allowed. Good defense as well. So we're going to hope that the pitching staff can help carry us to a second consecutive World Series championship. We'll obviously be doing a deep dive on all of our players when we get to our wrap-up episode, hopefully a few episodes from now, but a quick look at the statistical leaders. Seifu in batting average and steals, obviously. Luis Comerduran and Daniel Rojas tied for the team lead, but only 24 homers there. Juan Romero ended up leading the team in ribbies for a 4th consecutive year with 97. Floyd Auclair didn't have enough innings pitched to qualify for the ERA title, but was really good after we picked him up in that trade before the season. Led the team in strikeouts, and going to be really interesting to see what we do with this roster for the postseason. Have some big decisions to make. Houlihan ended up hitting 280. He is healthy, and everyone on the 30-man roster at this point is healthy. So we're going to get to make what we consider the best decisions for us as we prepare for the playoffs. Looks like with our latest scouting report on Juan Ramirez, not quite as effusive in terms of his ability to make contact as we thought. And he definitely struggled at the major league level. Hit just a buck 57 in 51 at bats, just a 46 WRC plus. He is better than Miller defensively, so I think there's an argument to still put him on the postseason roster. Miller hit just 216 this year, but did have 11 homers and 204 at bats, good for a 110 WRC plus. And he's a solid defensive player who's an established major leaguer, so that'll be an interesting decision for us to figure out. But I would think the thought of perhaps starting Ramirez over Houlihan as our catcher in the playoffs is certainly no longer in my mind. So we will find out exactly how these playoffs go in our next episode. Interesting finish to the season, not as strong as we would have hoped, but the most important thing is that we're healthy. And we're going to get to pick the 26 guys who we think give us the best chance at repeating. And we'll find out whether we make the right decisions and Lady Luck shines favorably on those decisions in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching and hope you have a great day.